Okay, here's how I adjust the ASM linkages on the ITBs. Everyone has their own method. I have my own, and hopefully this works for you guys. Gonna do this in a one take, so be patient. I may be setting down the phone, or might be kind of wobbly, or whatever. Just I tend to talk a little bit slower, so feel free to fast forward this at 1.5 speed or whatnot. But basically, I want to show you guys how I adjust the linkages on the ITBs, so to make sure they're perfect. And this was actually a request from a friend, so hopefully the rest of you guys can also make use of it. All right, so first things first, once you have everything all installed and nothing's been adjusted, the first thing you got to do is make sure that your throttle cable has enough tension, but not like super tensiony to where your pedal over in the front seat has too much tension on it. So what I like to do is first, once you kind of have a rough idea where you think this might be or where you think it might need to be, have somebody go in the car and fully depress and floor the throttle pedal. Or what I like to do is when I'm by myself, I have like a prop rod that I just wedge against the seat and the throttle pedal when it's depressed all the way down. So when it's depressed all the way down, basically this thing is obviously at that position, right? Fully extended, 100%, 100% basically wide open throttle. So at that point, that's when that person needs to basically show you that at wide open throttle, these ITBs are fully open at 100%. Not at 90%, not at 80%, not at anything like that, just fully 100%. Now, a common mistake that happens when doing these is over on the inside, as they're pressing the throttle pedal, even if they're like 50% of the way through, and they're only pressing the pedal, maybe say, I don't know, 50, 60, 70%, not all the way down, these things are rated at 100%. So there's actually a provision over by the throttle pedal that gives a little bit to where even when you're only like 70% pressed on the throttle pedal, these even though it's fully extended on a throttle cable, there's a provision over there that lets you not basically break this throttle cable. You don't want that. You don't want to be in that position. So have someone over there press the throttle pedal all the way down and monitor where it's at. And that's when you start messing with this cable tensioner. So you loosen it up, loosen it up, loosen it up until you're just about 100%, like that. So then as you're loosening it, it starts to become lower and lower and lower, and you kind of find that perfect area to where once they're fully depressed on it, you're also at 100% here. Okay, so that's just something to note. If you guys don't understand what that concept is like, I'll go through it kind of in another day. So don't mind, it's a big mess here right now. None of these have been mounted. It's all just zip tied together just because we're still probably going to pull this motor out at some point again. So also, I try to do this while the car was on and actually doing it live, but it is just too loud. It my voice can't talk over it. All right. So after you've completely basically adjusted the throttle cable, so you finish adjusting this throttle cable, then there's a couple of things here that adjust idle. You see the stopper bolt? So you see that? You see where right there? That's basically the stop for this front bank set of throttle bodies over here. There's also another stop over here for the rear bank set of throttle bodies here. So you need to adjust this stop to where you want idle to be. Do not adjust your idle based on throttle cable tension. All right, when this is fully at rest, so right now it's fully at rest, there should be a tiny bit of slack on this throttle cable. Okay, you do not want to have a lot of tension on this throttle cable, basically adjusting your idle. So that is basically a 3mm Allen right there, and you start turning this until you get to a particular throttle RPM that you like, but you'll need one of these balancing vacuum gauges to where you stick it on this side. You get this to, I don't know, roughly maybe like 5 or 6 or 7, wherever it is you want it to be, and you balance it out on this side. So this should also be 5, 6, or 7. So these are the first two you're going to do. You're going to do this one, you're going to do this one, or you can do this one first and then this one, but these two have to be balanced first, okay? So once you get these two balanced, then you can start balancing each of the individual ones on each side. So then you can do number 1, number 3, number 4, number 6, and then rinse and repeat. Back and forth, rinse and repeat until everything is pretty much equal. Okay, and how do you do that? For these, for the ones at the ends, not the ones at the middle, the ones at the ends, you have basically a idle. On the Gen Vs, you have this, this is what controls the throttle plate opening for this one. And over on this side, this is what controls that right there, the throttle opening on this side. So you'll need a 1.5 millimeter Allen, as well as a, I believe it's a 7 millimeter, this nut, this locking nut right here. So both of the ends, this one, this one, this one, and this one, it's all relative to what's in the middle. So you got to get the middle ones right first, and then both of these ends will be relative to what's the positioning in the middle. So you got to get all of these to sync up properly. Okay, so get that done, sync those up, then you're basically halfway there. Now the second one that you have to adjust are these cables here, and these two, or sorry, this main push rod here, and these two little push rods here. Now this is my breather, so don't mind this. I'll put this out of the way. Now these out of the box, I believe ASM comes with a couple different versions. This was a very, very early prototype model. But something that you should really pay attention to is I'm gonna pull this very, very lightly, okay? So like 1% throttle. That's like 1% throttle, 2% throttle, you know, it's very little throttle. But you can see that as I'm doing this, right, moving it very, very, very gently, I'm actually like moving it in my finger and there's zero play, okay? Zero play. That's because I fully tensioned this rod equivalent to fully tensioned this rod. These are very, very, very minute and very delicate adjustments, okay? So every one of these basically ball joints, every one of these joints has a tiny bit of play in it, right? That's just the nature of them, has a tiny bit of play, right? Even this one right here has a tiny bit of play. You want those to be at its full tension point by using these adjustment screws, all right? Because what ends up happening if they're not, okay, let's say one of them is at full tension, one of them's not. As you crack this open, one side's gonna open before the other, okay? So you want them both to open at the same time, at the very, very same rate at 1% throttle. I mean, this is basically why people don't go through this adjustment, and they like have horrible kind of street performance, or just like low throttle, moderate throttle performance, because none of their stuff is properly balanced. All right, so let's see here. Also, now these push rods, you also have to adjust based on, you saw there's multiple adjustments here. There's 1, 2, and 3, and each of these, depending on the one you have, is probably 1, 2, or 3 as well, just like over here, right? So you can see where I did mine. You might have to play with this because I believe there are 2 or 3 different versions of this throttle setup. But what ends up happening is these are all different ratios. These provide different ratios over here. So if you have this, for example, all the way on the inside, then at full throttle, you know, your leverage curve will be slightly different. So I like it the way it is now. But one thing to note too, see at full throttle, okay, you see how it's hard to see, but I'll show you. Right over here, this arc, you see how it basically arcs, right? Okay, so that arc that's a full arc right there. Okay, the video just died for some reason, but where I was at was I was trying to explain the way this arcs and the way this push rod pushes against this lever over here. So it's equal, it's the same on the other side over there. So I'm not gonna like show you that. I'm just gonna show you this because it's at a particular angle. I can get it on camera. If this rod is not the right length, as you push it, you're not gonna be in the sweet spot of that arc, okay? So what I mean by that is, for example, right now, as you're pushing and pushing and pushing and that push rod is pushing, then you're at the very sweet spot all the way to 100% throttle. Right there, it's not coming around the other way. So basically you can see like this is almost at the end of its arc, right? Which is at 100% throttle. So if this was not set up correctly, then your starting position may be over here. And then as you push to 100%, that might actually want to push this push rod, these push rods over here, further than its natural arc point. So it's really hard to explain, but a lot easier to show if I didn't already have this configured properly. So I hope that makes sense. But basically what I'm trying to show you guys is you have to be mindful of how the length of these and the length of these and the length of this rod over here. You're not just going to willy-nilly it because the starting points of these rods and where you end up with these. So for example, an example is if you start off with a really shortened position or too short of a position on this main rod, then you'll be forced to have these be super short, right? Be like kind of like, I don't know, half an inch or a quarter inch closer together on these. So what that ends up doing is it tweaks this main bell crank kind of over here, right? So that'll be your resting position. Now, as you push on this bell crank, so like if you're starting off right there, for example, your full arc swing is going to be so much further. And this, at this point right here, even though I'm showing it's at 100%, with the other configuration of what I'm saying, you might only be at like 80% and you still have more to go. But when you're pushing this through, it's like going to bind or it's going to do something different. So you just have to be mindful of that. I'm trying to think of what else I need to show you guys here. I think for the most part, that's pretty much it. Just talking through it. If I think of something else, I will append this video. All right. Hope that helps. Thanks. Bye.